when they were like the old school, like the one my grandmother trained me on, which was, it was all metal and it could stop a bullet. That's how heavy this thing was. Yeah, well, my mom won't let me have my grandmother's machine. This is a bone of contention in my family. I sewed a buckram hat. That thing, that could take, it could sew anything. And, but the newer singers are now owned by a different company. No offense to anybody who might own them. I think they're poop. Girl, you better watch yourself. I'm sorry.
I'm sitting in my house right now.
My Genome, I'll be ready. I just, you can find a lot of great brands out there.
The face-off between sewing machines will be Sunday.
I would have said, like, let's be mad at brother. Let's not.
No, seriously. Unless it's
Brother,
going to be an embroidery machine. They're embroidery.
But one of the things when you're shopping around, you'll find that some machines have a ton of bells and whistles, and they're awesome, and when they work fine, then you'll be extremely happy. But I've known enough people that buy machines with a lot of bells and whistles and they don't work fine.
Or you get overwhelmed by the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
My recommendation is to go to a sewing machine shop. Like an actual place that's all that they sell, because a lot of times they have classes on how to use your particular machine. So they'll teach you how to thread it, how to work it, what this button does, what button does, and don't press that button because it'll make it explode. It's really, really helpful. And don't buy a machine that's too much for you. Like me, I borrow my friend's sergers because sergers terrify me. I mean, I have had them eat things. So, yeah.
I agree. I just got a scolding from Yaya Han because I don't have a serger of my own.
Oh, don't tell Yaya.
They're scary, but I really do want. I think they're worth investing when you're ready. But I've made every single costume I've ever made on my singer. Well, I guess I had a singer before that too. So on a singer, not one single singer. But like it's just a basic sewing machine. It doesn't do anything fancy. All I know how to do is thread the bobbin, and yell at it when it messes up. But you don't need anything other than more than that. Honestly.
Yeah, and technically you don't technically need a serger because if you do it over the whole time.
Yeah, it's fine.
There's string stitches that you can get away with, but there are other tools that can be used in the hobby other than what we just covered, and there's stuff that can make your costumes just go bam.
One of the great things about technology and the day that we live in when it comes to costumes is resources that weren't available 10 years ago or longer are now that we have YouTube, we have tutorials everywhere, we have tons of websites that'll teach you almost everything. But bigger than that is the evolution of tools and materials. I don't know, Bill, if you've done a lot of work with 3D printing. I do not own one. I know people who have them, and I've watched them be used for things to make certain parts for our stuff. But 3D printers are an up-and-coming thing, and it's going to change the face of how things are made probably fairly dramatically, especially when you have places like shapeways.com, where if you can design it in 3D, you can send it to them, they will print it and send it back.
From small things to full things of armor they are printing.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But in addition, programs like CAD and CAM and CNC, which are computerized things that can now print to metal, they can cut metal, they can etch into all sorts of different materials. Laser cutters that can be used for vinyls and leathers, and this technology is getting cheaper and cheaper all the time, and it makes costume making, well, like Hollywood, basically.
And dye sublimation, I don't know if, a lot of times if you see movies and you see suits that have like shading of muscles on them, those are actually dye sublimation, which is a technique of fabric printing that puts the design into the fabric. So you can have somebody who looks like they got, big muscles, and it's actually just mostly shading on the costume. It's an amazing technique that can be used across the board for whether it's like if you want a swirl design or something, like say you're doing a waterbender from Avatar or something, and you want some swirls on your stuff. You can do it like that, and you can print it from fabric on demand in any pattern you want, if you can design it.
One of the other popular things these days is something called peppercura, which can be done in paper and or foam. So a lot of people are using it for armor these days. It's very labor intensive, so it falls back under that cheap, fast, good category. It is not fast by any means. Have you done any of that, Bill?
I've done some work, and I will say it is a very time-intensive thing. But what's really, really cool about it is you can do about anything with it.
Yeah. It's basically like big kids origami.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great way of saying it, Abby. It is big kids origami. You can create it. You can do anything you want. You can visualize it. You can turn it into that medium and really express it. But it is something that spends a lot of time to do.
But I think the most popular, newest technique that is in existence is Warbler. Or any thermoplastic really. Warbler and foam have really revolutionized the costuming community because you have a thermoplastic that you take your heat gun to and you can make it into almost any shape. It can be backed with foam, it can be backed with other materials. It can be used in millions of different ways. It can be painted and sanded and it's just awesome. There's a really popular cosplayer in Germany called Cosplay. She has won Blizzard Awards for her WoW armor. It's amazeballs, guys. It's just, you know, like, wow. We had the privilege of meeting her in person, and I was just like, I think I'm gonna because that's all I could say about the work that she had done with this heated up plastic. You know, it's like, that's G.I. Joe, I know he's awesome. You know, but there's also foam. EVA floor mats can be used to be made into armor. My female Master Chief is EVA floor mats from Home Depot.
Yep.
It's just awesome techniques that you can use in so many different mediums.
Up on the RPF, there's actually a section, and I forget the name of the guy's name at the moment, it's slipping my mind, but he actually has a whole section of foam files. So he's done all the 3D work to put these files together, and you can go and download them and print them out and make your own stuff, which is really kind of cool. Someone else doing the work. This picture here is of CNC milling and 3D printing. You can see the different 3D printing parts, and then the CAD program down below that basically helps to create those parts. So you have to create your part on a computer, and you get your dimensions, whatever, and then you can then go to work and have it printed out or whatever you need to do. What's next? This is actually EVA foam that's being templated and cut and shaped. Dremel, own a Dremel. If you don't already own one, best one of the it's hot glue and then a Dremel. Yeah. You can do anything almost with a Dremel. So this is just an example of some things that you can do with foam and plastics. What do we got here? This is more stuff. This is some sculpting. Warbler's down the bottom left-hand corner that was being turned into a crown or a helm, if you want to call it. Oh yes, safety first.
Okay, so before you guys start going into your garage and being all happy, let's have a disclaimer here about safety first. Respirator. I say that because when you start sanding or when you start painting or you start anything, that stuff goes right up your nose and into your lungs. And that being sick the next day because of those materials is not fun. You need to use safety glasses. Again, sanding, cutting, doing something. You do not want a piece of glass or Warbler or armor or something in your eye. Just trust me on this. Don't ask how I know.
Story. Our friend was working with Warbler. She's making a piece for her Thor. She's doing a femme version of Thor. And the end that goes up on the shoulder is kind of pointy. And so she's shaping it, whatever, and so she's trying to attach something. And all of a sudden this end, which was being pulled back, slipped and went ramp, boink, and scratched her cornea.
Yep.
The day before the con.
The day before the con.
So.
Yeah,
Safety
so
kits.
safety glasses. First aid kit, have one in your garage or wherever you're working. I can't tell you how many stupid things I've done to myself and wish I had a kit nearby. And we have a saying in costuming, it's not a costume until you've bled on it. That's because we're all cutting ourselves and not wearing safety gloves and doing the same thing. So you don't have to sacrifice to the costume gods. It's okay. Try what you're doing.
Yeah, and before that, there was a note in here that there are, believe it or not, depending on where you live, there's a lot of classes out there that you can take and learn stuff. Stan Winston School has a great series of things. You can pay by class, you can sign up for, I think it's like $300 a year, which sounds like a lot, but when you realize they have a ton of content up there, from everything from sculpting to casting and mold making to painting, and you can watch those videos on an unlimited basis for an entire year, that's pretty cool. And a lot of your local places may have classes on sewing, or local art schools might have classes on how to sculpt or whatever. There's lots of good stuff out there. All right, trial and error.
I just want to say one thing locally here. I know some of the people in the audience don't participate in this, but Hammerspace locally is an awesome asset to our group. Basically, it's a co-op that has like back tables, access to equipment and stuff, so it's something really cool to look into.
So Bill, do you want to talk about trial and error with costumes? Just take it out.
Yeah, I'm going to breathe very deeply in that because there is trial and error, and you're going to go back and forth. That's why I said the crash and burn thing, I touched on that. You're going to make mistakes. Don't get mad at yourself. You know, because number one, you're very focused, and sometimes you're doing something and you're working on a deadline because you want to finish something for a certain thing. Sometimes the best thing you can do is step back for a few minutes and breathe. I know I was so engrossed when I was making a particular costume. The craziest thing I've ever done was I'm circling around, cutting with the Dremel, the best tool other than an eyeball gun, and I actually cut the cord to my Dremel. The power went out in the house. I'm amazed that I'm not electrocuted and not even in fear, because I was so focusing on the shape of a curve that I'm carrying it out and I'm moving down, and I'm focusing on that, not anything else. And sometimes you do a little work and step back, do a little work and step back. It is some of the best things you can do, and review it. And then again, when you're doing the medium, and you may change medium sometimes. Sometimes I start with one medium and I think this is like the best thing ever. Like I thought fiberglass knees for a biker scout was really cool. Fiberglass cracks and breaks. And what do I do with a biker scout? I kneel all the time because I can bend down in the costume. So I found out, like for instance, ABS is a much better medium for that. Because it's funny, on an ABS, fiberglass looks really cool. It's really shiny, it's really purity, it stays solid. Until I put my fat knee on the ground and I crushed it after 20, 50, 20, 30 uses. So you're going to go back and change things. It's something I live by as a costume. I never finish a costume, ever. It's something I use over and over. You know, your trial and error, and you think these guys have touched on it. People have done this before. You know, one of the best experiences when I did Boba Fett was I sat down with a guy right after we got approved, and he just got approved, and we started looking at how we did our rigs differently. And we actually walked away both altering our rigs completely based on, you know, spending like an hour together, but, oh my God, you did this. You know, and it's like, you used a parachute clip for this? And I was sitting there thinking, I looked at like every possible hard way I could to fasten something, and it was something like an easy answer, like a parachute clip. And I over-engineered every time sometimes, and that's the biggest problem.
One of the things with trial and error is when you're getting ready to do props, it's a little less of an issue because a lot of people make props, but you know, they may not necessarily be utilizing them for something. But if you're gonna bring it out and it's gonna be for show, whether you're competing in a costume contest or you're wearing it on the floor, also plan for a backup.
Yep.
Because you know what, failure is always gonna happen, and you wanna have something. If this fails, what am I gonna do? And so have that, you know, the old rule, carpenter's rule, measure twice, cut once, use a ruler.
Do you guys touch on commissions at all? Is there a slide that I'm gonna?
No.
Okay.
You may
Let's
speak.
talk about it. Thank you. One of the things that I do want to touch on, I know this is about crafting your own stuff, and please try and fail and craft. But if somebody else makes something, don't be ashamed to buy that. Check out how they made it. Check out what materials they're using. Actually, there's this wonderful fellow
Reverse
here,
engineer.
Zach, that he was here last year. He's adorable, Zach. Look how cute you are. Zach wore a suit last year that was completely bought by other people, and then this year he made almost everything he's wearing. So like, feel free to take
touch
pieces.
that.
No, feel free to touch that. But feel free to buy things, buy a costume, and then learn from what you're buying, because then you can make your own.
And Meg's right, because there are some things that it just makes more sense to have someone else make. My indie hat, while I've made hats in the past, I couldn't get a great batch, you know, like the hat maker that made my hat. You know, he modeled it directly after how they made them in the movies. No matter how hard I could try, I would not get this shape. I mean, there's nothing wrong with commissioning pieces or having people commission if they're the epitome of stuff, but always give them credit.
Always.
Always. And now I do have a disclaimer about that. If there is an issue, like people have run into stuff, they're like, oh, I commissioned so-and-so to make me a suit of armor, and then he stole my $3,000. What do I do? No, you don't have to credit that person, but you do have to say, I had this item commissioned. but I can not discuss the commissioner. Just, you know, you can leave it like that. But this is people's, you know, income you're messing with, and their kids' food and their rent, and, you know, you do want to give credit where credit is due.
I just think it's a wonderful learning experience. I never could have made that psycho mask. I would have just melted my hands off. But now that I got a chance to like put my hands on it, oh, I see how we did this wiring. Like I've never worked with wiring before, but getting to see it firsthand, it's a really good learning experience.
And going with commissioning, you know, sometimes there's a thing is, you know, take this whip for example. You know, this whip, unless you're a whip maker, it's probably not something you're going to learn to do right away. And it's a craft that takes years to learn, or at least several attempts. Most of the time, stuff like this is going to be one of those things where it'll take you more money and time to figure out how to do it than it would be just to have the expert do it in the first place. And unless it is something that you go, I really want to learn how to make a whip, and then that's fine. So, you know, you pick and choose, and that's what we do. A lot of times we leave it to the experts. When if we need a cowl, there's a certain vendor that we go to because we know they're good and we know what they've done. They have a history of it, and we know it's going to be what we want. So it saves us a lot of time and effort. All right, where are we at? We talked about patterning and testing out. For those of you who work with like leather or are thinking about working leather, things like denim and or craft foam, you can actually pattern your whole thing out and kind of throw it together in craft foam and figure out if it's going to move the way you want it to before making that investment into
A hide.
the leather, or cutting into the hide, I should say.
Yeah. Don't do it. I did and was working on their gauntlets, and I bought a really nice leather hide from Tandy Leather, and I was like, oh, I got this, it'll be fine. I patterned it out of some material I had hanging by. Went to go put on the leather glove and realized because the other material stretched, but the leather did not, I just ruined a $200 leather hide.
Oh my god, I did that with my Mulan costume. You can see if you ever check out from the sides, it looks like there's panels down the side of my Mulan costume. That's because my boobs didn't fit, and I had done it in a stretchy material, and then cut pattern. It happens, even though I know I'm not supposed to do that. I did it, and then put on the Mulan costume. It was like, ah, shit.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, no matter how long you craft anything in your life, and I'm sure Bill and everybody else here can attest to that, you could be a master at it, and you'll still manage to make rookie mistakes.
Yep.
You'll do something, and all of a sudden you'll look and go, son of a, I know better than that. What was I doing?
Yep.
I do it all the time.
Sleeves.
Sleeves are the devil.
Sleeves are the devil. So are
Gloves are
invisible.
the devil.
No,
I'll take sleeves over gloves any day.
Okay, yeah, well, invisible zippers. Let's culture some of that. Invisible zippers. Anyways.
Bill?
I will say one thing, sometimes mistakes are really cool too.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get some really cool effect that you didn't ever expect to do. I was preparing for a troop and I painted a chest piece that I use for a gunner chest plate. And I packed it away, I let it sit for 7 days in the garage, put several coats of paint on it, and set. And I wrapped it up in a Walmart bag, just covered up and put it in my thing. Well, obviously it was a little hot outside.
Oh.
And I put it out, took it out, and I'm like, what happened to my armor? And there's these huge gouges that was into the paint. And I'm like, my God, look, this is awful. And I started really looking at it, and it looked really cool. I mean, it looked like a Wookiee had took its claws and like tore into my chest. So I mean, sometimes you find some really cool effect. And I'm like, I use that for weathering. I know I actually replaced it, sanded down the thing I did, but I actually use that as a weathering technique now. So it's kind of something that was completely unexpected and it was an error. Like, I'll never do that again. But I use it for something else, a Walmart bag.
Our friend Megan Marie, she's done amazing Wonder Woman costumes. She's really talented. She has a thing of, if it messes up, throw blood on it. And that's what she does. She's like,
Battle damage is
she hides all her mistakes when she's making her armor under battle damage and dirt and blood. And I'm like, that's why you're always filthy. I understand. But you know, when you get to the point where you've done your research, you've got your inspiration, you've done your research, you're into your build, you're about done with your build. You know, you've tested it, and we're going to cover some of this more. You know, there is completing the look. There is makeup, like I said, you know, there is eyeglasses, color. Are you doing a character that is blonde where you have red hair? Or do they have blue eyes? Do they wear glasses? Do they not wear glasses? What's their makeup like? What wigs? How are they wearing things? How do they walk? These are all things that are very small in the grand scheme of things when you just spent 6 hours making, 6 hours or more making a costume that really give it a finishing touch. You know, changing your eye color, changing your hair color, makeup especially, and I say this for men and women. If you are playing a male character that is, you know, say he's an anime and he's really polished and really fair skin, throw some makeup on. Because we actually met a cosplayer this past weekend who did Thor, and he always looked phenomenal. I was like, what is your secret, dude? What are you doing? Are you really like Thor? And he's like, no, because I'm wearing makeup. I was like, what did it, okay, this works.
No, I have to piggyback on that so hard. Normally, like 9 cons out of 10, I have a professional makeup artist that comes with me because I can't do it on my own at home. Like no matter how many tutorials on YouTube that tell me it's super easy to put on fake eyelashes, it's not. It's torture. But it makes, like when people see those costumes that where Amanda has done my makeup, and then they see me like, and every day they're like, you look completely different. Well, that's because somebody did my makeup. And like in my Bulma Bunny costume, people always comment and say, this doesn't even look like you. Is this Photoshop? No, the picture hasn't been touched at all. She just did my makeup to look like Bulma's, and it changed the shape of my face. It changed the shape of my eyes completely. So if you're, you know, if you're not somebody who knows a professional makeup artist, you can definitely go on YouTube. There are tutorials for every type of look. Anime eyes have a different type of eyeshadow and eyeliner and all those great things that you're supposed to use, but they make a world of difference. It breaks my heart when I see a cosplayer who has a costume that is so beautiful and so accurate, and they have a prop that's just gorgeous, and they're not wearing like either no makeup or not nearly enough makeup, and it makes their costume completely unbelievable because it's just that one little thing that adds polish.
Yeah, and it can break down to the little things, and you know, whether it be a prop or a costume, if it's your prop. Yeah. Everybody. Okay. Anyway, but you can, you know, paint is a huge thing that makes the difference. Distressing, weathering your costume. If it has dirt on the bottom of the hems, throw some dirt on the bottom of the hems. You know, you build up all those little details. May make no difference to the average 100 people that pass you, but the one person that is a fan of life of that Firefly Captain Mal costume that happens to know that on the back seat, you know, the right back pocket, there is a stitch that's torn and there's a little thread that's hanging out, and you did that, you've made their day.
Don't be a clean Indiana Jones.
Don't be a clean Indiana Jones, ever. And we've talked a little bit about wigs and stuff, and wigs go back to resources. And we are, hey, yeah.
So this is something that I know we'll probably all like have a thing. Practicality costume, okay?
And with props.